Welcome to a very special Shortwave show. I know you're saying, all right, wait a minute. It's Shortwave. It should be 7 p.m. It should be, but it's not. So don't be mad at me. It's a very special time today, a little bit past 3 p.m. on the East Coast. And I have what I think is a very interesting guest talking about many things that sometimes I talk about here and that many of you talk about. The idea of maybe it's the left and the right are both bad, right? Maybe they're both no good. Maybe there's something else here for us. And then how do we get there? But also having a struggle between each of us kind of being either a bit left or a bit right or far left or far right. And then what happens when we find out that maybe our tribe isn't the cool tribe that we thought it was? Maybe we aren't where we should be. And how do we kind of navigate that also? I'm bringing on a guest about that and many more things. She is, if I get it right, an organizational psychologist. She'll correct me if I'm wrong with that one. A journalist, an activist, and a host. She's also a former gubernatorial candidate and admitted rabble-rouser / troublemaker, the one, the only, Karlyn Borysenko. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Did I intro you right or did I mess up?
It was perfect.
Look at that. I'm doing well already. So I think the big issue I want to bring up right away, the one that comes to my head is, you know, I spend a lot of time, I don't know if you've followed any of my stuff, but I spend a lot of time talking to the left. Yeah. It's a big thing for me talking to the left. And many libertarians either don't want to or aren't good at that. That's not a skill set. But I honestly believe in my heart that if we're going to change the country, we have to bring the left over to us in some way, shape, or form. That the country is is left, more left than right. And in many cases, going further left, not all cases, but in many cases it is, we've got to pull them to our side or we're not going to be able to make change. That happened to you. It wasn't me who did it though,
no.
but that happened to you. You were pretty much a lefty and then that changed. Tell me about that.
Oh gosh, I mean it's such a long story, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I was on the left for 20 years. I grew up in Vermont. I have voted for Bernie Sanders in every single election that I could vote for Bernie Sanders until I moved to New Hampshire. And so yeah, I was on the left and I never thought anything about it. And to be honest, after Barack Obama got elected president, I was really into politics in the George W. Bush years. Like I was in college during the George W. Bush years. I was doing like anti-war protests on the Boston Common and things like that. But as soon as Obama got elected, something switched in my brain. I just shut my brain off to politics entirely. And I focused on my career. I focused on, you know, I was working on my PhD. I was starting a business and things like that. And I really just wasn't paying attention at all. I was shocked.
Well, hold on. This is the thing I want to bring this up because a lot of people on the left say that's true. And I think you're an example of that. People on the left will often say, Democrats, I'm saying people on the left, I'm going to say Democrats.
Yeah.
Democrats will often say, hey, we have to still fight because, you know, these are brunch Democrats. If there isn't a battle, they go off to brunch and forget about it. And like you said, Barack Obama wins. Okay, the left has now won the war. We can all go back home and hang out for brunch. And I think it's one of the reasons why so many Democrats, not necessarily leftists, but I'm saying specifically political Democrats, love the idea of Donald Trump running. Because he becomes the boogeyman that motivates Democrats to come out and vote. Is that similar to what you were talking about or no?
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's actually a really fair assessment. It was like, I was really interested in politics when it was kind of like a game and we were the opposition. And like, I actually remember thinking on the night that Obama was elected, like, woo, I don't have to worry about this anymore. And I can go on with life and, you know, do other things. And then, so 2016 comes along and I was genuinely shocked that Trump got elected. I was like one of those people where I wasn't like actively necessarily paying attention to politics all that much, but I did have MSNBC on in my house. Like my poor husband,
like every good Democrat does.
Exactly. Like my poor husband had to watch so much Rachel Maddow, like God bless him. But like I generally did not see it coming. I was one of those people that I cried like when Trump got elected. I was really upset. But at the same time, so the week after Trump got elected, I actually went to Peru to do ayahuasca for like 10 days. And that was
Wow.
like my coping mechanism for like, okay, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. So I'm going to go do some spiritual work now. And I say that kind of like, in jest, but I do actually think that that was something for me that saved me from getting sucked into like Trump derangement syndrome as much as pretty much
Mm.
all of my friends did, because I had God, I had spirituality. I didn't have that God-shaped hole that needed to be filled. And so I didn't like Trump, but at the same time I was like, this might not be the worst thing that's ever happened. Like, let's keep an open mind. I didn't mind some
But hold on, you just
was
said something. You
doing.
said
Yeah.
you brought up a religious reference just now.
Yeah.
Now that goes back to what I know you also speak about, the idea of politics being a cult, right?
Yeah.
You do bring up, and that's the name of your podcast, actually, the cult.
Yes, the cult.
So you just said, you had God. What do you mean by that? Were you a practicing Christian? Is that what you meant, or did you have another entity that you
No,
called God? What did
I
you mean by saying I had God in
yeah.
2016?
I have a I practice like a generalized spiritualist belief where I've worked with shamans and teachers like all over the world to, have like what my conception of God is, which is it's not Christian, it's not any sort of organized religion. It's just kind of like a way of thinking about the nature of life and things like that. And so yeah, I mean, I have been actively practicing it for a long time, and I do feel like I do have that divine presence in my life. And I feel like a lot of people on the left don't have that in any
Hmm.
cohesive way. And so they look to fill that with things like social justice and like activism. It gives their life meaning. I didn't need that because I already had it. And so all of my friends basically lost their minds. I was working in higher education when Trump got elected. So all of my friends basically were in higher education, which is very, very, very far left. And they all lost their minds for several years
Yep.
after that. And I was kind of like, I'm not going to play into this. I don't want to be angry all the time, like whatever. Well, around
I remember.
20
Hold on, I'm sorry.
Oh, go
I
ahead. Go
remember
for it.
I got yelled at I've also done the same thing. I've taught I've taught at the graduate level of both Yale and Columbia, and I taught at Baruch. So at some places I've taught, when I just mentioned in 2016, Trump might win this thing. I was not sure he was going to win. I still thought at the time that Hillary was going to win, but I
Mhm.
knew it wouldn't be a blowout. Because I
Yeah.
talked to people. I knew people who, they thought Trump was great. So I thought, he might win. I got yelled at
Oh, I bet you did.
because I said he might. I didn't even say he was going to win. I didn't say I was going to vote for him. I said, Trump might win. And they were screaming at me. There's no way. America's not racist. I mean, it's just terrible. I was so surprised on how angry they were when I just said, Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to
No,
reinforce that.
No, I mean, I absolutely bet you did. It's funny. I do this stream on my channel called Socialism Saturdays where we watch real socialism content, and Columbia and Yale are great providers of this socialism content.
Yes,
I'll tell you what. Um,
absolutely.
so what happened that really kind of started my change was that I'm a knitter. You can see on like my shawls behind me. I've got my knitting on my desk right here.
Yep.
And so I like, knitting is something that I do just as a hobby. And I was interacting with the knitting community on Instagram mostly. Well,
Okay.
in mid 2019, social justice started to take over my knitting community. And they were like running
Wow.
around and like just threatening people's businesses if they didn't say the right things, and like doing all these like very public struggle sessions. And it sounds funny, but one guy actually got mobbed so badly by like thousands of people on Instagram, and they tried to destroy his entire business and his entire career. He ended up in the hospital on suicide watch. And so
Wow.
like this wasn't actually a joke. Like this was actually really impacting people, and I kind of saw this happening, and at some point it clicked with me that these are the people that I'm on the same side of politically, and I'm just not comfortable with this at all. And so that kind of that kind of started me on a little bit of a journey where I started challenging myself to listen to people that I thought I would disagree with, like Ben Shapiro,
Mm.
like Milo Yiannopoulos, like these people that I was told were literally Satan. And I would wait till my husband left the house, because my husband secretly watched Ben Shapiro every once in a while. I didn't know it, but he didn't tell me. So I would wait till my husband left the house and like lock the door and pull the shades, and I'd turn on Ben Shapiro and be like, okay, he's not insane. He's a conservative, but like he's not the devil. And so I actually was doing this. I mean, like almost every single day for several months was
Mm.
like just trying to push myself outside of this echo chamber to figure out what's
But
going
when
on.
you first listened to
Yeah.
someone who was you at that point being much further left,
Yeah.
now you listen to someone like Ben Shapiro. I mean, he's obviously far right. He's a conservative,
Oh
clearly and
yeah.
openly, right? And
Mhm.
openly. You had to be thinking, no, this guy's wrong. Just like viscerally, he's wrong. Wasn't that a problem you had to get over at some point?
Certainly there were elements that I thought he was wrong, but there were also elements that I thought he was right. And I think it's like, I think it goes back to being an organizational psychologist and you can understand this. Like I've had to go into organizations and coach a variety of people and listen to a variety of
Sure.
perspectives. And I think you learn how to kind of detach the person from what they're actually saying after a while. And so I think with people like, I never considered myself really to be, I never considered myself to be a conservative. I never considered myself to be on Ben Shapiro's team, but I was like, okay, with this, he has a good point. With that, he has a good point. And like the bigger picture was it made me question everything that I knew was true. And so when you go through a red pill experience like I did, it's like you really don't know what is true and what is false and how many lies you've been told by the media. I'm still reverse engineering things. Like I was at the Boston Marathon bombing in like 2013. Like I'm still reverse engineering the Boston Marathon. Like was I told the
So
truth and stuff like that. So
let me touch a piece that you bring up,
yeah.
right? When I was most people who watch the show know that I was a Marine for many years, right? I still consider myself a Marine. Like I'm literally branded, right? So I
Oh,
still
there you
have it,
go.
right? I still am, yes. But when I was in the Marine Corps, I was in intelligence for a period of my tour there, and one of the things we had talked about was the idea of interrogation. And we saw a video of a guy, an army officer who was interrogated from the Korean War. He was captured by the North Koreans during the Korean War in the 50s, and then interrogated by Chinese interrogators.
Wow.
And he was interrogated in the 50s, but the interview was from the 70s or 80s. That's when they interviewed him. And he said he never forgot when the Chinese interrogator came to him. And the Chinese interrogator starts telling him how great communism is, how wonderful it is, and all these things, and how evil capitalism is, and the whole deal. And this officer happened to be the stereotypical Northeastern rich white guy kid who went to West Point. He was that stereotypical officer that you would imagine in 1950s Army. He was that stereotype. And he looks at the officer who's speaking in English to him. He says, "You're never going to get me to think communism is great." He goes, "When this war is over, I go back home to my beautiful family, my beautiful wife. I'm a war hero now. I'm amazing when I go back. Capitalism treats me fine. What are you talking about?" And so the interrogator says, "Oh, no, I'm never going to get you to think that." He goes, "I don't have to. All I have to get is to make you believe that your way isn't perfect and you'll leave Korea."
Isn't that funny? Isn't that
That's
funny?
it. He did not have to get the guy to believe that communism was awesome. That guy was never going to believe that. His life is far too good. But just to think it's not perfect, then maybe you'll leave. And that's kind of what you were talking about.
That's exactly right. And that is what the left tries to do is they try to plant these seeds of doubt and maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit, but particularly targeting capitalism, not to like not that they think that everyone's going to turn into like a communist or a socialist overnight, but they're like capitalism is bad for reason X, Y, B, and Z. And then they usually like play on the idea of crony capitalism to try to get people to think that all free market capitalism is bad, things like that. So no, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. But like, going back to where I was like on my red pill journey, it was really hard for me to even know what was true and what wasn't at that point, just because I was very much in a haze. And so the big culminating thing on my journey was so Donald Trump was coming to New Hampshire to do a rally, the day before the New Hampshire primary in 2020. And I was like, you know what, Carlin, you've been listening to people you disagree with for months now. Like, this is your graduation exercise, is to go to a Trump rally and just see what happens and just go in person and see for yourself. And so I went to this Trump rally and I ended up having actually a really great experience. It was really fun. It's like a rock concert. And everyone's so excited and everyone's so nice. And even when they knew I was a Democrat, they were still nice to me. And so I came home and I actually remember that night I was sitting parked on the street corner after the Trump rally. And I had a headache so bad because of all the cognitive dissonance that was like, I have been lied to like for years. And so I went home and I wrote an essay that I posted on Medium about being a Democrat going to a Trump rally. And I didn't really think anyone would ever read it, to be honest. Like I was just posting it basically for my friends and family to say, like, I don't think you guys really understand like what's going on. And it ended up going viral on the internet and it got like 4 million views or something. And I was like on Fox News and Glenn Beck and like all this stuff based on that essay. And that kind of launched me into being a little bit of a conservative darling in 2020, which is not something that I ever thought I would experience in my life.
But hold on. Now, this happens to you, right?
Yeah.
And when this happens, you're literally doing things like you're part of a walkaway movement, you're doing
Yep.
PragerU videos.
Yeah.
I mean, this had to be have an effect on your community, meaning you and the people who you were close to. This had to be have an effect on friends and family
Oh,
and
yeah.
maybe even your knitters. I mean, it
Oh,
had
yeah.
to have an effect, didn't it?
It had a tremendous effect. Like, I was working with a company and I won't name them, but like I was doing a lot of like organizational psychology with like one company that was like I was basically running their organizational psychology practice. They ended up like I mean a week after my Trump rally article, like I got a text message from the owner calling me a racist and I never heard from him again. And so it was like little things like that. I mean, I lost like I mean the vast majority of the people that I was friends with because they were leftist, they still are leftist to this day. They wrote me off immediately, posted all this crazy stuff about me. Like, so it was really quite a trying time. And like, I never expected to be a public person on the internet. Nothing prepares you for that type of like exposure all of a sudden. And so like going into Walkaway and getting involved in these other groups, I think for me it was partially like a coping mechanism of like, okay, well, I have lost all of these people in my life. Like, I would like new people. And to be honest, I was much more interested in being around people that were hinged into what was going on because I wanted to try to figure out I analyze social systems, right? So like I wanted to figure out what was going on. And so naturally I just kind of gravitated to these communities that were selling me like
But
we understand you, you know?
but you had to feel betrayed, didn't you?
Yes and no. I mean, it was
Okay.
I think, you gotta like, at that time in my life, I guess I never really thought about it like that. I think I had gotten over my level of betrayal, like, I had already felt betrayed before that
Okay.
by sheer virtue of, like, everyone lied to me. I don't even know what the truth is, but it's also like, you know, I really think that most of the people on the left are really they're good people that are trying to do the right thing, and they've been swindled by this ideology just as much as anyone else. And so it's like I was lied to, I bought into it, they were lied to, they bought into it. And it's so I think I was a little bit forgiving of them, and I would still today, like
Okay.
even my friends that I lost back in the day, like I would still have conversations with them today because I think that they've been taken in by something that they don't understand.
Okay, all right. I think you are. I have felt betrayed many times, but I agree with you. For good or for bad. Sometimes for bad. I'm very forgiving. That has not always been a positive trait for me.
Oh, I know.
But yes, but I have been very forgiven many times.
Yeah,
So let me move, if I could, to the DEI piece. And this is your
sure.
job. You're making money here.
Yeah.
And I found, and I don't know how long you've been in this business, but I remember not as a trainer, but being trained by DEI people back in the 90s.
Mhm.
And it was terrible. I mean, it was horrible. It was things like, okay, so if someone's Asian, understand they may not want coffee, they may want tea. That was the training. Yes, you're laughing. It was terrible. Like, I thought, so our goal is to reinforce stereotypes? Is that our goal? And to make more people like all Asians are the same? Is that our goal? And
Yeah.
that kind of was like, that was
Yep.
kind of what they were doing. But I felt like over the past, not recently, but maybe about 15 years after that, it started getting really good. And that's when I was more involved. I was more involved when DEI was really just emotional intelligence training, which is what I do.
Yeah.
I do a lot of emotional intelligence training. It's all about understanding intent, understanding impact,
Yep.
knowing the difference between the two, blah, blah, blah. It was all good. I was happy doing all that. I was actually even training New York City agencies, right? Even the agents I was training city agencies. But all of a sudden I saw how, and it's probably for me, I saw happen around, it hit me around 2018, 2019.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So it's not just, okay, it's you two. Okay. That's when it
Yes.
hit me to where all of a sudden people were like, okay, Larry, so what's your anti-racist training?
Yep. I was gonna
Okay.
say exactly the
Yes.
same thing is so I was speaking at like so I spoke at basically like every single conference the Society for Human Resources Management does. So like
Mhm.
that's like the big HR organization for people who don't know. And so like I was going to like all their annual conferences, all their smaller events, and it was around 2018 that all of a sudden in the SHRM conference floor, half of
Yep.
the vendors there were doing DEI training and all of the sessions were about DEI. And I was the kind of same as you. Like I do DISC is my primary training
Oh,
tool
sure, I
that
know
I
disc.
use.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's what I do. Like I do DISC assessments and DISC trainings and stuff like that, and pretty much everything I do is built around that, and also integrating that with like mindfulness practices. And so this DEI stuff came in, and people were asking me about like, what is your type of belonging training? What is your type of inclusion training? And I was
Yes.
like, let's talk about communication. Like, like the normal things that people talk about, but that wasn't what people wanted
Not at all.
anymore. And it was really it was a very significant shift that happened very quickly. And to be honest, I hadn't actually really looked into it all that much. I was just like, all right, well, diversity, like this was like what was going on in my head. Diversity is a good thing, right? So let them do their diversity training. I'm still going to do my thing, and maybe there'll be chances for alignment and stuff like that. Well, no, I didn't realize
No.
at that point that most diversity
No.
training was absolute garbage. That was
Yes.
based in like pseudoscience at best. And it's actually
Yes.
one of the first things I started researching on my YouTube channel was like looking into like the characteristics of the white supremacist organization and like what all that stuff meant, and explaining to people like this is not actually real. This is not how
Right.
they're making this up. But no, all that stuff is garbage. It's not to
But,
say
but
that.
what I thought bothered me though is just in my personal view, I
Yeah.
actually stopped doing it. Like I was like, I'm
Oh
done
yeah.
because it
Yeah.
literally was the opposite. And you'll get this. The audience may not get this, but one of the concepts of emotional intelligence, there are many of them, but one of them in communication is differentiating intent from impact.
Yeah.
Right. That's one of the pieces to differentiate the two. Right. Impact and intent can be completely different on both sides. Right. Someone can have terrible intent and have no impact, good intent and horrible impact. I mean, it
Yep.
all depends on what someone's looking at, right? But no, now anti-racist training says they are exactly the same amount of what? In fact, intent is
Oh, yeah.
irrelevant.
Yeah.
Intent is irrelevant. It's against it. Actually, now at least the data is coming out now that modern DEI is absolutely hurtful and harmful. They're figuring it out now. I was telling them that 7 years ago,
Oh
but
yeah.
now they're actually coming out going, "This is hurtful," and I'm like, "I know." And by the way, I'm getting work again, so
Oh
that's a
yeah.
positive thing.
Oh, I've noticed the same thing too, because I still
Yes.
do like disc assessments, and every once in a while I'll do a training like on the download that I don't talk about publicly. And like some people have been like
Yes.
slowly worming their way back into my email. I'm like, I recognize you from 2018. But like
Absolutely.
one of the things that I noticed was that if you look at so there's this PDF literally called Characteristics of a White Supremacist Organization that it was influencing a lot of this DEI training. And if you look at the characteristics that they believe are white supremacy, on the disc model, they all align with the most dominant style in the disc model. So they're all things that the boss has to do. And if you don't have
Yes.
someone doing those things, then you don't have a functional organization, right? So it's like, even looking back then, and I talk a lot about this on my channel, especially with the socialism content that I do. The biggest enemy of the woke left is not it's not white people. It's capitalism. That's what they go after all the time. And so it's
Mm.
actually interesting for me to think about like they're pushing this stuff into organizations to attack the boss of organizations, who they believe is the bourgeois, right? Their biggest thing is eliminating private property, eliminating that bourgeois boss level. And so they're pushing things into organizations that are going to lead to the downfall of the organization. And this is why, as we're seeing now, this training doesn't work, because you need people at the top of organizations dictating a vision and helping people, inspire people towards that vision. That's a very functional need that any organization has. You can't exist without it.
Right, right, right. No, I agree. I agree completely. So that went to my next piece, which is, you have become almost a warrior against woke.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess
I
so.
have not. I'd just let it go. My assumption has always been it'll burn itself out. But maybe I'm wrong here. You have been much more actively fighting woke than I have. I just go whatevs and I let it
Yeah.
go, and I figure it'll work its way out. Plus, I know lots of. I live in New York City, so most of my neighbors think woke is amazing. Most of them think it's all correct. Most of them are totally on board, and they would teach their kids that all day long. They love it. They think it's wonderful. Who am I to fight them? Is my thought process, right? But
Mhm.
you've taken to actively fighting it. Why? Why not chill out and move on, do whatever you want? Why fight it? I'm
There
not
is
saying you're wrong. I'm asking a question.
No, there is something to be said for ignoring it and not giving it any energy. And like I look at things like the Dylan Mulvaney fiasco, where like
Mhm.
people get like the conservative right made Dylan Mulvaney famous. I'm sorry, like
100%.
if they had just ignored Dylan Mulvaney would have gone away, right?
Yes.
So there is something to be said for ignoring it. But I think what I've taken, and I don't see myself like as an individual being in the active fighter role anymore. I think I
Okay.
was in 2020, I was in 2021. I've kind of tried to transition to like I have picked up over the course of the last several years an immense amount of knowledge about how the woke left works, how they're showing up. I think I have a really nuanced view of it that a lot of people don't have, because I've spent a lot of time just watching their trainings. I've watched thousands of hours of diversity training. Like, I have damn near lost my mind. I've watched thousands of hours of it. And so I'm downloading everything I know about what these people teach and who they are, and I'm trying to teach people that might be on the left or might be questioning things or might not. They see all this crazy stuff happening in the world around them and they don't know what to make of it. I'm trying to break everything down to say, here is what is actually going on. And in some respects, I think providing resources for people who were like me, that when I woke up, there was no one explaining this stuff other than conservatives who were trying to take advantage of it to gain political points. And so that was the resource I had at that time, was conservatives, which is why I spent so much time with them. But like, it doesn't need to be that way. And I do agree with you that I think that the biggest pool of people that libertarians and third parties have access to that can actually make a difference are disaffected lefties, are people that are more moderate, that are more centrist, that maybe they have one or two things with the left that they really agree with and they don't necessarily like everything the right is doing. But there is a place for those people that they know something is wrong with the world, but they don't know exactly what it is. And I'm trying to break it down to them in a really nuanced way to say, here is what is going on. And then I'm kind of in the place right now where I'm like, I'm going to show you what's happening. I'm going to bring you receipts. I'm going to make it as clear as I possibly can. You have to decide what you are comfortable with. And if you're comfortable with what they're doing, then stay with them. If you are not comfortable with what they're doing, then there is a group of people that you can join that are not part of the left or part of the right that don't like what's going on.
Let me give you another way of how I look at it. I look
Mhm.
at it actually as, I think if we want to get the left, I think we need to get the far left. And I mean the furthest left.
Mm,
I mean like the
that might be a
communists,
challenge.
like the anarchists. And the reason why I say it is they hate Democrats
Yes, they
and
do. Yeah.
they hate Democrats. So if you go far enough left, they hate Democrats, right? And they're never going to vote Republican.
No.
So they either check out or vote for a third party. They're the people going to jump on the Cornel West bandwagon, right? Or something
Mhm.
like that, right? They're going to so I think that we actually have a chance of getting them as long as we can show the idea of voluntary socialism.
I actually would agree with that. And I think, one of the things that I've been very blessed to is living in New Hampshire. I have access to like the free staters that have just taught me
Mhm.
so much about libertarianism. And I think, one of the things that really resonated with me is this idea that like New Hampshire is trying to do the Free State Project, right? We're trying to get as many libertarians to move to New Hampshire as possible so that we can actually
I
gain
get
political
bugged
power.
every week. I
Oh,
know.
yes, I know. And they're probably
Yes.
upset that I'm not pitching you right now, I'll tell you that. But, like, what I've thought about is like, Vermont, where I'm from, Vermont is basically lost. Vermont is like 75% communist at this point, and when I say communist, I actually do mean communist. Like, the schools are completely taken over, the government's completely taken over. Let all the communists move to Vermont and have their little communist utopia, and
Mhm.
as long as they leave us alone in New Hampshire, I have no problem with it, you know?
Yes. Yes, and I think we have an option of grabbing some of them too, but I also bring up your other point, which most people don't get. The hardcore right make, and I mean the most vocal, aggressive right, they make Dylan Mulvaney's, they make
Oh, yeah.
icons like that. They make those people, right? And the hard aggressive left, they make Nazis.
Yep.
So each side makes more of the enemy, right? And I think they know that and love that because they feed off of having an enemy. And
Mhm.
as long as they keep fighting culture wars, life is good. Oh, great, we're fighting culture
Oh,
wars.
yeah.
This way, we're not making any actual change in anything. We're just constantly fighting culture wars. The left will keep making, the right, the Nazis, and the right will keep making the left icons, and we're good. Then everyone's great, right? Bernie Sanders became, the bad guy because the right made him a bad guy.
Oh, yeah.
The left ignored him, didn't give him no respect. So anyway, let
They
me
ignored they
quickly.
ignored him and they cheated him out of the presidential nomination twice.
Also true. Also true. But let me, if I could, do some admin real fast.
Sure.
Guys, if you are watching and you like it, you're listening to the podcast, please click the like button. It does matter. Every like does matter. I have to get past Al Gore, the algorithms. I have to get past algorithms. So please help me get past Al Gore. Click the like button so I can keep moving forward. If you happen to be watching this on Twitter right now, retweet this. Literally right now, just click retweet. I know you're saying, But Larry, this is such a good-looking panel. It's true, but we'll still be here. You can click the retweet, and we won't leave. I promise. Click that retweet. You can keep going. If you want to get your chat to the top, you can super chat me. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, Larry Sharpe YouTube, you can do so. If you want to support the show directly, you absolutely can. Patreon.com/Sharpeway. Throw me $10 a month. I can spend more time doing this and less time doing my damn DEI training. If you would support me here, I could do that. But no matter what, Carlin has been so good. She has been good to us, giving us time and energy, and we still have more time with her. Please follow her on Twitter at Dr. Karlyn B. And if you're listening, that is Karlyn. If you do that, or her Substack at carlin.substack.com. So let me keep going if I could.
Yeah.
You decided to run for governor.
No, I didn't decide to run for governor. This is people don't actually know how this happened.
That's why I'm asking, because I don't know.
Because I never actually wanted to run for governor. It was a joke. It started as a joke where, okay.
A joke.
I accidentally ended up on the, I tripped and basically ended up as a governor candidate. So I used to be actively involved with the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. I am no longer actively involved with them because they're now just a Twitter account and there is no point in being actively involved. Actually, you know what? I want to back up a little bit to how I got involved because this actually does matter in the story. So I spent basically the entirety of 2020 touring with the Walkaway campaign. And the reason that I did that in the PragerU video, which was a big mistake that I regret now, but I didn't know better at the time, is I really did want to try to get more people to leave the left. Like I legitimately do see the far left as a big problem in the country in terms of like what they're doing in schools, especially. And I wanted to be part of like waking people up, getting them to leave. And those were the resources that I had. Right. And so that's how I got entrenched kind of like with the conservative community, because I looked at the Libertarian Party and you see like Joe Jorgensen tweeting Black Lives Matter. Well, in 2020, that didn't work for me. And so I kind of shut my head up, my mind off to it entirely. But after the election, so New Hampshire was the first state in the country to introduce anti-CRT legislation in schools on a state level. And so this was like my number one issue, right? And so I was really involved in New Hampshire, working with the reps that were trying to advance this legislation. I was running all over the state, trying to explain to people what critical race theory was so that they understood why this was, because people didn't know about it back then. It was still something that was very new. And so there was a moment for me, and at some point, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire and the Mises Caucus reached out to me to say, we should talk because, I think we believe some of the same things. And I was like, fine, I'll talk to anyone, like whatever. So there was a moment in April where basically what happened was there was so much Republican pushback on this anti-CRT legislation coming from Chris Sununu and the governor's office in New Hampshire. This was Republican pushback on this bill. And I was really starting to get very disillusioned with the Republicans and the conservatives. And I said, you don't really want to win. Like this legislation
hold on,
is like,
let me ask, and this is ignorance for me.
Yeah.
Were they against it because they wanted CRT in the schools, or they didn't want a top-down solution?
Chris Sununu was kissing the backsides of the teachers' unions for votes, is what he was doing.
That's why.
That's why. And so it wasn't the Democrat Party that was getting in the way of this legislation. It was the Republican Party. And so I was putting all this time and energy into doing this, and I felt like I was fighting people who should be on my team. And this is when I really started realizing, I'm like, Republicans don't want to win. Like, they don't want to win at all. And so there was this moment in April where I was doing a rally outside of the State House in Concord run by Lily Tang Williams, who is amazing. Is running for Congress this year. Amazing. But like, I looked out over the crowd as I was talking about like what critical race theory was. And 90% of the people there were libertarians. And I knew they were libertarians. They weren't Republicans. And so that was a moment for me. I was like, I can't be involved with a party that has no interest in winning at all. And so that night I went to an LPNH Mises Caucus meetup, and I basically said to them, I'm done with the Republicans. This is ridiculous. I'm no longer wasting, because I had like wasted hundreds of hours at this point trying to help them, and they didn't want my help. And so fine. So I left. Started getting involved with the LPNH, started getting involved with the Mises Caucus, started meeting like free staters all around New Hampshire, stuff like that, and really started learning about libertarian principles. And that was when I realized, I was like, oh, Joe Jorgensen tweeting Black Lives Matter is actually not all that libertarians stand for. And I was like, this is actually much more in line with what I believe. And so I was very lucky to be in a place like New Hampshire where I did get to learn from some of the most principled libertarians in the world. So I got very involved with the party. I was involved in like the Mises Caucus takeover and all that stuff. And at some point at the beginning of 2022, we were like, we should probably run political candidates. And the candidate that everyone wanted to run was Jeremy Kauffman for Senate. And I was completely on board with this, and I really wanted him to run, and I was totally behind it. There was also conversations behind the scenes prior to the state convention of like, should we run someone for governor just to like have someone? And what I said was, I will do it if I don't have to do anything and it's just the name on the ballot. Because what we were running into was there were other libertarians in New Hampshire who were causing us problems, who we didn't want to have their candidate run for governor and represent us. And so I was like, okay, fine. You guys are talking about a paper candidate. I will do it if I don't have to do anything. And then people kind of like, there was hemming and hawing about this idea, whatever. Well, we show up at the state convention, and Ian Freeman, who is like the Free Talk Live guy, he gets up without telling me he was going to do this and nominates me for governor. And I was sitting there. I literally shouted when I was like, oh no. And because I really had no idea it was coming. And so I'm sitting there, I like have my head in my hands. I'm like, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? And I hear my friend Ashley yell, do it. And I was like, okay. And I accepted, and I was like, what did I just do? And then they voted for me, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm the. So this was not a serious thing. And even there are videos of me talking about it on my channel multiple times saying, this is not a serious, like, I'm not going to be the next governor of New Hampshire. But I did want to use the opportunity because I had it. I was like, why don't I talk about what's going on in the schools? And try to advance, because defunding the schools is an issue that I'm very serious about. I was like, well, this isn't a real thing. I'm obviously not going to be the next governor, but we can talk about some issues here. And so that's really what I tried to do. And, I was involved in the ballot access initiative, and I know you know about ballot access. You tried to do like a Herculean initiative in New York. You're like, oh my God. But it took us months and months and months to get Jeremy and myself on the ballot in New Hampshire. It is just like, people have no idea what's actually involved. And but even in my acceptance speech at the convention, I said my entire platform is vote for Jeremy Kauffman for Senate, like, because that was the race we were all focused on. And so it really was an accident, is what I'm trying to say.
Do you feel, I don't want to get you in trouble with people in New Hampshire. Do you feel comfortable talking about New Hampshire and the LP New Hampshire? Do you feel comfortable?
Oh, yeah. So I feel comfortable. Oh, yeah.
Okay. No worries. Good. So Jeremy Kauffman, obviously.
Yes, I do.
There's a bunch of people across the Libertarian Party who think he's terrible, horrible, the worst guy in the world. And people think he's not. Do you have an opinion either way?
Jeremy Kauffman is not a bad person. He's really not. He is a good guy. He is a family man. He has 4 kids and a beautiful wife. There are things that, and I think that Jeremy Kauffman is legitimately one of the smartest people I've ever met. I learned a lot from Jeremy Kauffman when I was, hanging around with that whole crew. I will say that there are things that Jeremy says and does that I do not think are advised, and I don't think are a good idea. And I think that some of the tweets coming out of like the LPNH is just like, at this point, I think they're just trying to pander to the alt-right to get views and clicks on Twitter. And I just think I wish they were doing it differently. And it's like Jeremy, more than anyone else involved in the LPNH Twitter, is a principled libertarian. He really is. But
he's not, as they say, and again, I'm just asking the question. I don't know Jeremy, so I don't know. He's not, as they say, a closet righty, like a closet Trump supporter, like a closet this.
No, there are closet conservatives or closet like alt-right clout chasers involved in the LPNH. That is absolutely true. Jeremy Kauffman is not one of those people. He really is a deeply principled libertarian. I just wish that he would think a little bit about how he phrases some of his public posts sometimes.
So let me then bring that back to people who were angry at you, if I could for a moment. People think that you have said things that you probably shouldn't have said,
guilty
things that you probably shouldn't have said, those types of things. Do you have any view on those? You are a what's the word you use? Rabble rouser, troublemaker. That is a thing you are. Were you saying those things to make trouble? Did you mean the things you said?
Tell
me if you want.
Yeah.
Walk where you want to walk.
the things that people are upset about that I've supposedly said are
Mhm.
usually taken and twisted completely out of context for what they actually were. And so when people are upset about me at something, the first thing I'm going to ask is like, is this a serious complaint or are you just being outraged for the sake of feeding your outrage addiction? And the vast majority of the time, it's literally just people being outraged for the sake of being outraged. And so do I feel like I owe those people an apology because I hurt their feelings? No, not in any
Okay.
way. I'm not responsible for your emotions. But I do think there's something to be said for the fact, and this is kind of why, to be honest, like I was on the LPNH communications committee for a long time and I went along with like the Twitter stuff, even when I didn't agree with the messaging, because I do think there is something to be said for the fact that we need to be pushing the bounds of free speech to make sure that speech is protected for everyone. And so, I think that there's something to be said for making people angry, for really triggering people, for pissing people off. And I mean, maybe it'll help them build a little resiliency so they aren't pissed off so much the next time.
So I guess that goes to my point. You being a psychologist
Mhm.
and being in academia, I
Mhm.
could see you wanting to have an academic conversation. But on social media, boy, that does not go over well.
No. It doesn't, and I don't even
It
try
does
to have
not go over
academic
well at
conversations
all.
anymore. Yeah, no, it doesn't go over well at all, but I don't even try to have academic conversations anymore, to be honest. I try to have very I really try to boil everything down to, like, brass tacks to make it as simple
Okay.
as I can possibly make it. I don't like this whole thing of, like, saying 10 words to say something when you could say it in 2. But no, you're right. I think that it is very hard to have a nuanced conversation on social media, but I think one of the things that I've been able to do over the past couple of years is, to be honest, I really had to shift my entire social media audience from being mostly conservatives who followed me during 2020 to now I've actually been able to balance it out to have it be like 35% conservatives and the majority being libertarians, disaffected lefties, like independents, people like that. And I have actually found, because I've been able to eliminate a lot of the outrage nonsense from my feed, that I am able to have those more nuanced conversations. And I am able to do it on my YouTube channel because I heavily moderate my YouTube channel. Because the minute you allow this outrage nonsense in is the minute that sanity goes right out the window, right? And so people tend to have a problem with me because I unapologetically block people, and I will tell you when I have a problem with what you're saying, and I will tell you to stop and things like that. And if you don't, you're not going to be around anymore. Because what I'm trying to do with my social media and my platform is to create a place where people can actually learn and have nuanced conversations about what's going on. And so I think I've been able to do that rather successfully, but it's because I'm willing to block people and say, no, you are not a part of my audience. Go over, like, you can go somewhere else. You just can't stay here. That I've been able to do that.
Got it. Oh, so you're saying that people who get blocked by you
Mhm.
then feel like you're not open to hearing them.
Oh yeah, they say I'm censoring them, they say I'm deplatforming them, they say this, they say that, and it's kind of like, for me this is a voluntary association thing. Like, you are choosing to just, re and cry all day, and while you are more than welcome to do it and I will protect your right to re and cry all day, you're not going to do it in my feed and you're not going to be disruptive on my channel because I'm actually trying to create an environment that's conducive to learning. And I kind of liken it to, like, like I say this on my channel all the time, like, you're in my house. You would not come in my house and just start throwing a temper tantrum and throw stuff all over the walls without expecting that you're going to be asked to leave. So why would I allow you to come into my YouTube channel and have the same temper tantrum where you're honestly just disrupting
Mm.
things for everyone, right? And so, people get really upset about it, and they can have all the feelings they want, but I'm not obligated to interact with them.
No, I get yelled at myself, so I understand. So not as
Yeah.
hard. People get yell at you harder than they yell at me. You get worse hate than I get. But yes,
Oh,
I
I
get some
know.
hate too. So is it okay if I bring up one person who's also an associate of mine, a
Yeah.
friend of mine? I had her on a show before. People are asking me to ask you about
She's
Carrie
not
Smith.
she's not gonna like that you're bringing her up. I'll
She's
talk
not.
about her, but she's not. Oh, yeah, Carrie Smith, spent 2 years engaging in a smear campaign against me that I've documented the entire smear campaign on a Substack that I wrote called survivingcarriesmith.substack.com, where this
Wow,
woman.
you
Oh,
actually
yeah.
wrote a thing about it.
I have over 1,000 screenshots of Carrie Smith's smear campaign against me over the course of 2 years.
Wow.
And I ignored it basically for like the first
Hmm?
year. I really tried not even to play into it, but it actually ended up getting really bad because like half the people you see in the chat right now are actually part of Carrie's little cancel mob that she has spun up, that they have doxed my friends. They've driven by my house and taken pictures.
No.
Oh yeah, they went 15 years into my social media history and doxed my college boyfriend to smear
Wow.
me. And so it really,
Wow.
like, like people like, you're like, you wrote a whole book about
Hmm?
this. Well, I did, because 2 years into the smear campaign, it got to the point where I was like, I have had enough. Like, I know what's going on and I need to be able to have something to show other people. So I understand that Carrie Smith comes across as a normal human being to pretty much anyone else on the planet, but Carrie literally wrote an essay about me where she called me her abusive mother. Like, this is a
Wow.
woman, she did, still on the internet to this day. This is a woman that I've had less than 5 conversations with in my life. And she's writing essays about how I'm her abusive mother. And so, I've offered Carrie the olive branch on several occasions. I've said, I will talk to you. I will talk to you and your pastor. I will bring my spiritual advisor and we all can all have a conversation to try to put this behind us. She has never accepted. And, it has reached the point now after I wrote the book, she's kind of stopped talking about me so much. And so, I don't
Well,
know
I
if
shouldn't
people
have.
want.
I shouldn't have brought this
Well,
up.
like I said, she's gonna be more upset with you than I am. I wrote an entire
Okay.
book about this situation. I'm not upset about it. Like, if people want to know what happened, they can go and read survivingcarriesmith.substack.com. But
Well, there we go.
that's what it
Okay.
is. People can decide for
I'm the.
themselves.
I'm. My audience is asking, so I'm asking. So that's all I'm
It's
doing.
all
So it's
good.
all good. I get it completely. So okay. So let me then move over, if I could, to something else. The idea of now in your show is called The Cult,
Yeah.
and I feel like a part that I agree with completely, right? I've said often that our political parties are no longer really political parties, they're tribes,
Yeah. I
right?
agree.
If you look at, and I'm old enough to remember this, if you look at, say, a maybe a Jimmy Carter Democrat
Mm-hmm.
versus a Barack Obama Democrat versus a Clinton Democrat, they're all different Democrats. Even a Biden Democrat, they're all different. A Reagan Republican versus a Trump Republican versus a Bush Republican versus a Nixon Republican. These are all different Republicans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why are they all so damn different? Because the warlord is different.
Yeah.
And the tribes change based upon the warlord, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Republicans, I got to give it, were honest last time. They said, we're not making a platform because it doesn't matter.
Oh, I know.
Our platform is Trump. So let's stop playing. That's our platform. What does he say? That's our platform, which I actually respected that. It's going to sound dumb, but I did, because that was honest. They were like, it doesn't matter what we say or do. Whatever Trump says, that's us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, hey, okay, I get it. So look, you believe in the warlord or you don't. Okay, fine. But I think the Libertarian Party doesn't always do that. It's much more principled in that regard. I could call myself king of libertarians if I want to, but I'll be laughed off the stage. But I can do it if I want to call myself that. I'm not, because they're going to beat me up on policy and on principle all the time. So you talk about being a cult. I agree. Is there value to a cult, though? What I mean by that is, would a libertarian cult be a good? And we kind of had a little bit ish in Ron Paul a while ago.
Yeah.
Kind of, right? I mean, it wasn't the same, but it was similar-ish, right? A lot of it was there. And I think that kind of helped us, didn't it? I mean, maybe it's a positive thing to this. Am I becoming authoritarian by mistake?
No, I mean, I think it depends on the nature of the cult. Like, I have, I have my friend Andrew Gold. He has a great YouTube channel. He has a show called On the Edge where he talks about cults. I had him on my channel several times, and we talked about the fact that, pretty much every single group that exists, whether they're big or small, they're a cult to some respect or another. And so I think there is something to be said about the fact. I think the problem that libertarians have is that libertarians are so different, right? It's like there's so many different varieties. You have left-leaning libertarians, you have right-leaning libertarians, you have libertarians that think they're conservative. You have, I mean, it's just like there's a whole variety that exists. And so I think it's hard for libertarians to kind of coalesce into this tribalist mindset, because what principles are we coalescing around? You could say the
Right.
non-aggression principle, I suppose, but beyond that, we all have very different things that we're interested in. I'm interested in defunding the schools. That is my number one issue. And even though it is in the Libertarian Party platform, it's not something that's really talked about, I don't think, enough. You have other people that are, anti-war. You have people that are 2A. So I think it's difficult within the Libertarian Party to create that kind of tribe.
Right.
It's much easier on either the left or the right.
100%. Absolutely. 100%.
Mhm.
People were teasing me in 2018 because after I'd run for governor, there were so many people who were following me who weren't libertarians.
Mhm.
They were calling them Larrytarians. And I thought, is that a good thing or not? Like, there was a part of me that thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Right? Of course, right? I'm still
Yeah.
human. I like the feeling of it. It's a warm, fuzzy feeling that people like me, of course. But I thought to myself, is that a good thing? Right? Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I need to change these Larrytarians and bring them into libertarianism. Or do I want to build that cult of personality and take it to the next level? And I actually wasn't sure what was the right answer.
Hmm.
But that goes into the next thing I'm going to bring up, which you bring up often, and that is narcissism.
Yeah.
It's a big thing for you. And I agree, because people often get mad at this, at this idea about narcissism, that it's a bad thing, it's a terrible thing. And I agree, generally speaking, that's true, right? But at the same time, don't we kind of need it a little bit?
Oh yeah, everyone has narcissistic tendencies, right? If we didn't have narcissistic tendencies, we wouldn't take care of ourselves. We wouldn't, shower or make sure we look appropriate when we're live on the internet or things like that. And so I don't actually think there's anything wrong with like narcissism. The reason I focus so much on it is because, well, first of all, like when I did my dissertation, I studied workplace bullying and toxic workplace
Mm-hmm.
environments for like 10 years. And so narcissism was just a part of that. But I also think that when I'm looking at the psychology of the woke left, it is a very narcissistic psychology. And actually, there was a study that came out not too long ago, maybe like a month and a half ago. The New York Post wrote about it, where narcissism is actually one of the main driving behaviors of far left activists. And like they'll tell you it's social
Wow.
justice and wanting to do good in the world, but when you actually dig into the psychology of it, and they assess this, narcissism is driving the whole thing. And so I think there's a lot of overlap between, and that's not to say, by the way, that everyone on the woke left is a narcissist, because I don't think that that's necessarily true. But I think there are a lot of parallels if we want to understand why the left operates the way it does. I always tell people on my channel the four goals that the woke left always has in every single thing that they do is to gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, and then usher in their Marxist utopia. And gaining power to be able to have control over people is an inherently narcissistic thing. That's what narcissists do better than anyone else. And so, if we're going to understand how the woke left operates like it does, understanding narcissism is a key part of that.
So, okay, with that in mind, you mentioned that you don't judge people as much, or you try to not judge the individual. I know you
Yeah.
do judge groups. I know you do judge
Yep.
groups, but you try to not judge the individual. Doesn't that doesn't it make it seem like you're almost pro narcissism? Doesn't
I
that
mean,
come across as if you're like, yay, narcissism?
I don't think so. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that, but I'll tell you what I think. So I actually do
Mhm.
judge people. I judge people all the time. I think part of our human nature is that we are making judgments all day every day. Is this good or is this bad? I think what I try to do that I think is different from a lot of people is that even if I have judged you and I say you are a bad person, that I do not like, I don't agree with anything that you stand for, I will still listen to you, and I'll still do
Oh,
it with an
that's what
open
you meant.
mind.
Okay, I
Yeah.
misunderstood.
Yeah.
That's my
And
mis
and
I
and
misunderstood
then
you.
if I find
Okay.
out that my judgment of you is wrong, I will be the first to say, "Oh man, mea culpa." Like I'll give you an example. Yesterday on my show, I watched the interview that Michael Knowles did with the QAnon shaman. And I have to say, I judged the QAnon shaman. I did. I thought he was crazy. I like all this stuff. My mind was completely changed by actually listening to him for 2 hours, because I was like, I completely misjudged this. So I think it's human nature to judge, but I think we should also actually hinge into reality and listen to what people actually say, and not even just listening to what they say, but understanding the intent behind what they're saying, and really trying to come to some sort of conclusion about it in a way that they themselves would agree with. Like if I'm watching socialist content, which I do quite a bit, like I don't want to have some sort of like hyperbolic, kind of distorted view of what socialists believe and who they are. I want to know what they actually believe, and I want to say what they believe in a way that the socialists themselves would agree with it, and then we can all look at it and say, is this the type of thing that we want or we don't? And so, yeah.
Oh, okay. That I was confused. Okay, that
It's
makes more
okay.
sense to me. Okay, now I'm clearer. So,
Mhm.
but the other issue I bring up with is it feels sometimes when I watch what you say or what you talk about that almost there's a lack of hope sometimes.
There is a lack of hope sometimes.
Yes.
I go back and forth. I really do. I feel like I waffle like back and forth from the white pill to the black pill all the time. I mean, and I think that lack of hope, I think sometimes comes from the fact that, I like we talked about this before we came on the air, but like I have made shitting on the conservative right into an art form. And one of the reasons that that happened is I'm so frustrated with them not wanting to win. And it's like I was around these people in 2020. I know what they can do when they actually put their minds to doing something. The problem is they're just lazy, and most of the time they just don't want to do what's required to win. And so I think a lot of my black pill is from the fact that I think the authoritarian left and the authoritarian right are both problems, right? But the authoritarian left is far more dangerous right now because they have far more power in the country. And so I look at the right and I'm like, you have the tools to do this. You understand that there's a problem. You just refuse to fight it in any sort of cohesive way. And I kind of look at it like, well, we're on our long slow descent into socialism if some large group of people doesn't step up and start speaking out against this. And I don't know if we can mobilize enough independents and like disaffected lefties in time, because they're so far ahead of us, Larry. Like, you weren't acting, they are so far ahead of us. And it's just like,
100%.
and I look at the situation and I'm like, we could be doing more to push back against this cultural revolution, and we're not. So maybe I should just, enjoy my socialism too. I don't know.
Well, I think it makes people want to check out,
Yeah.
right? I think and I saw it in my election last year. Sorry, the election I ran in last year, I got my ass kicked last year. I saw how many people just walked away, just said, Larry, we love you, but there's no hope. And they walked away.
Mhm.
Some voted for the other guy. Some just literally walked away from me. Some checked out and some literally packed up and left the state. I mean, literally packed up and left the state, just walked away. And I do feel that sometimes the hopelessness. I do feel
Yeah.
that sometimes, which is almost like a nihilism. But
Yeah.
can that be attractive? And that worries me also,
Hmm.
right? Can the attractiveness of the why bother, can it draw more people even out? So you draw someone, I pull someone out of the left or out of the right, but then I put them into black pill. I want to gold pill them, right? That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
In my perfect world, I'm gold pilling people, right? That's my perfect world. But I don't know if I always do that, right?
I I agree with you. I think that the best thing could happen politically in this country is the rise of a third party, and I really do want that to be the
Yes.
Libertarian Party. I really, really do. The Libertarian Party has its own problems, but I think that there's a lot of there's so much appeal that I think the Libertarian Party could have to both people who came from the left and came from the right. But the biggest enemy of the Libertarian Party is other libertarians. Right? It's like I can't tell you how many times people have told me to get out of the Libertarian Party because I'm still a leftist or I'm a conservative, and I am all things to all people apparently. And it's just like, okay, do you want people to change their minds or not? Because I tried out the left. I did that for a long time. I found it to be lacking. I tried out the right. I did that for about 50. I call the conservatives like my one night stand. Like that lasted for like one night, and I decided that wasn't a good idea anymore. And I came to you, libertarians, and I've stuck with you for 2.5 years now, and I promoted you all over the place. Can you please stop telling me to get out of the party now? Because I'm not going anywhere. It's like why are we telling people who are evolving and changing their minds that they don't belong? We should be welcoming them with open arms and making them never want to leave.
I cannot tell you how much you are correct on that one. I often do classes for people who are running for office. And one of the first things I say, I ask many questions, but one of the questions I ask is, can you be backstabbed by a fellow libertarian who's supposed to be on your side? Can you then pull that knife out of your back and hand it back to him and say, I believe this is your property. Can you do that? And if you go, no, then don't run. Because if you run for office, you will be stabbed at least once by a fellow libertarian in the back. At least once, if not more. I was stabbed so many times. It wasn't even funny. So many times. You will be. Guaranteed it will happen. And one of the reasons, I mean, there's many reasons why, but one of them is we spend so much time losing elections, all we ever do is win arguments. So we want to just win arguments. And that's all we ever do. We're the type of party that, say I find this great libertarian. This person is really good on everything. But there's one thing they're bad at. And that is the draft. I'm making this up because there was recently a thing about the draft. So there's some guy who, he has some issues in his life and he believes that the best answer is the draft to make America's youth strong. He believes that. Okay. Clearly I don't. But again, this person believes that. So he'll go on a libertarian podcast and everything else, he'll be awesome. We will just hammer him on the draft issue. The entire thing is what a piece of garbage he is because of the draft. That's the entire thing, even though everything else we agree upon. And his worst part, he'll be running for something like mayor. So he actually has no power over the draft anyway, and will still hammer him. And it drives me crazy. I'm like, just forget about it. Move on. Who cares? Just move on. So he thinks the draft is good. He's good at everything else, and he's running for mayor. Leave him alone. But we don't do that. We just hammer like there's no tomorrow. I completely agree.
I completely agree. And it's the same thing with going back to like, it is impossible to have a nuanced conversation on the internet about things that actually matter. Like, did you know, Larry, I've exposed more real grooming in schools, like actual grooming in schools through policy and through curriculum and stuff like that, than almost anyone else in the country. Did you know that?
I did. I saw you.
Okay.
Wasn't there a lawsuit because of you?
Yes, there was. I broke the story that led to the first ever lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools in the country. And the reason I bring this up is like I have this list of things that are exposed, and I just want people to know what's going on. I want to document what's going on and show people. Do people ever talk about that? No, they never talk about that. What they talk about is, Carlin, you tweeted this thing that I didn't like that time, and then you blocked me on Twitter. And it's like, can we please, for like 1 second, focus? I will unblock you on Twitter if we can have a conversation about something that matters. I promise you.
I do like that, right? And I think I do say it often. I remember somebody was like, told me I shouldn't run because they have dirt on me. Years ago.
Like,
and I said, oh, that's great. Put the dirt out.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't mind. Whatever, put the dirt out. And the point thing is funny is, if you put the dirt on me, I'm a libertarian. What do I care? I was on an interview once, and some guy said, I can't wait till we find out the scandal, that you were like with 3 sex workers or something. And I'm like, that wouldn't be a scandal. That would just be news. That wouldn't be a scandal. That would be what happened. All right, I'd be like, yeah, I was going to get a 4th, but she was busy. So sorry, I would have got a 4th. But anyway, and I'm laughing at that. But I mean, I feel like this is the thing that I see happens heavily on the left and right, but I think libertarians do it also. But they do it worse left, right, which is when they don't want to argue, they character assassinate.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think that's actually worse on the left than the right, but both of them do it. Libertarian, actually, it's the least. We are the best when it comes to doing arguments on policy and issues, but we also character assassinate, right? We do, but I think less than the other two. And I think once you do that, your cult, all character assassination does, in my view, is it makes sure that your cult is on your side and ignores that person.
Right.
Right. So if I go, well, I would vote for Trump, but he's a racist or whatever. Okay. So now my cult goes, oh, racist. Don't listen to Trump anymore. Doesn't matter what he says. Doesn't matter what he does. Right. Or if I say that, the same thing about, Biden. Oh, I would, but he's corrupt. Oh, okay. So I don't talk to him anymore. I can ignore him. I think it's true all the time. Sadly, it works. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely true. And again, I think it goes back to the fact, and this is why I tend to be blackpilled a lot of times, is that I don't think that most people actually care about things that matter. And I wish they did, honestly. And
Mm.
it's like, again, like I have this the incident that's really haunted me the most is I have a whole bunch of volunteers in my community. I call them the unwoke army, where we will actually go and infiltrate private trainings that the woke left is doing and record them and show them to everyone. I infiltrated a training back in January called Autistic Sex Education. This was an autistic sex education curriculum that was taught at the National Sex Ed Conference as a keynote, which means it's going to be taught in schools all over the country. And I got this person on video talking about how they teach autistic children how to masturbate with sex toys without their parents being around, how they lie to grant organizations and say they're trying to teach autistic children about sex so they can defend themselves from predators, but they don't actually teach them that because they're too busy teaching them that they're all non-binary and trans. And I have 100% of this on video. And it's like, there's all this talk about why are autistic children why do they seem to be more susceptible to gender ideology in schools?
Yep.
I have some ideas. It's because they're teaching it in autistic sex ed curriculum that is specifically geared towards autistic children, and I have the whole thing on tape. Can I get anyone to have a conversation about this? No, because people will not sit down and actually watch it. And it's like, it's things like this where I'm like, you scream about grooming in schools all the time. You make tons of money writing content and creating content about all these evil groomers in the world. But I'm showing you actual grooming on video and you won't talk about it because you're more interested in generating outrage and clickbait that isn't actually real than you are in tackling the problem. And I think that, if there's any plea that I would make to people, it's like there are actually real problems in the world.
Uh-huh.
And everyone needs to have a hand in trying to solve those problems. But if you are more interested in being outraged on the internet than you are in truly understanding in a nuanced perspective what is going on in your communities, in your schools, with your kids right now, then don't expect the problem to be solved because it's never going to be.
So let me do a little bit of admin if I could again. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're seeing, do me a favor, click that like button. I know I asked you before, but do it again. Even if you're mad at me or mad at somebody here, do a hate like. It's still good. It doesn't matter. Help us either way. I don't care. It does matter. Look, you can take this and show your friends how bad I am. Oh, good. Yes, I don't mind. Please do it. Like does matter. Please do so. If you're watching on Twitter, please retweet it right now. It does matter. Every retweet matters. Every like matters. They're all good. If you haven't been watching on YouTube, Larry Sharp, you can super chat me if you like. And if you want to support the show directly, patreon.com/Sharpway. Throw me $10 a month so I can do this and less DEI training. That'd be awesome. Also, Carlin's been very good to us. She's been giving us lots of information, taking a lot of questions and responding to them. So respond back. Follow her on Twitter at Dr. Karlyn B. And if you're listening, that's DR for Dr. Karlyn, the letter B. Or you can follow her also on Substack at carlin.substack.com. So if I can keep going a little further on this one.
Sure.
You have talked about the idea of narcissism again, and sociopaths, things of that sort, and the value of cults. How in the world are we going as a liberty movement, not just the party, of course, but also the movement? There's many ways of bringing liberty besides just the party. I'm clearly a party guy, but other people can do other things, whatever is going to work. How do we find that balance of cult of personality and not? In other words, there is value to someone saying, oh, one of our most popular libertarians running around is Spike Cohen now, right? So there's value in someone going, oh, I like Spike. Spike's doing a thing. I should go follow and do that thing because I like Spike and he's doing that thing. So isn't that valuable or is this a problem?
I think anyone running for a position like president or something like that, there needs to be, to a certain extent, some cult of personality. I mean, we talk about this in terms of presidencies, right? It's like some people have that thing you need to be elected president, and some people just don't have it. And so I think I think one of the most effective things that the Libertarian Party could probably do is field a really compelling, charismatic candidate for president that is able to go out and articulate the core values of what it means to be a libertarian and to share those values with the world. And I think Ron Paul was an example of someone who did that effectively. Not, unfortunately, it's like a libertarian candidate, but he articulated libertarian values to the world in a way way that was compelling, and it did have this kind of like movement built around him. And so I think there is value to having people out there that you can build a movement around, and I think it's necessary to some extent. I also just think though that those people need to have a good core group of people around them that's going to keep them honest. And that's probably the key thing that I think, would be missing if it wasn't like if you are an actual narcissist, you are going to surround yourself with yes men that are only going to tell you what you want to hear. But like if you're going to be out there what I would think of as like a good candidate for president would be like someone who can take constructive feedback in private, that asks for a variety of opinions, that surrounds himself like kind of like Lincoln did, right, with like a team of
Mhm.
rivals sort of thing, to help keep you honest, to help keep you humble, to help the star power of it go to your head, because I do think that that
But
is
hold
actually a
on.
problem. Go
Once
ahead.
I bring somebody in who is not ideologically pure,
Mhm.
now I am tainted by that person, aren't I? So, in other words,
Yeah.
once if I bring in, I had it happen to me. I brought in actual communist to talk with, and the second I bring, oh, why are you platforming the communists? People don't like me talking to you. Why are
Oh,
we?
yeah.
Why are you platforming her? Right? People like me talking to. I brought on a police officer last week who was all about qualified immunity is a terrible idea. Liability insurance for cops is a terrible idea. We have enough training. People didn't like that either, right? I mean, they didn't. But I wanted to bring that up because there are people who believe all of these other things. I don't think that police officer was a bad person. I don't think he believed he was a bad person at all. I think he believed he was doing a great job, trying his best. This is what he believed.
Mhm.
I didn't agree with his thought process. But so how do I do that without people saying, Larry, you're a bad guy? You've got to keep all the pure people around you. Otherwise, you'll be tainted
Well,
by the evil.
I think that I mean, why are we letting the outrage addicts run the asylum? I guess would be my
Okay.
question. Is like, I mean, people are always going to say things. People are saying lots of things about me in the chat right now that have no basis in reality at all. Are we going to allow these people to be running the asylum and dictating how we show up in the world? I don't think that's a good idea. And I think that, I mean, I think someone running for like a high level, and I'll go to president, because it's like you need to have that certain
Sure.
charismatic something to run for that type of position. It's like it has to be someone like a Donald Trump that can block everything out. And that is actually a very narcissistic tendency, is to be able to block out all of
Sure.
the negative feedback and only give yourself positive reinforcement. But that's what you need in order to be able to succeed in this environment. Listen, I will never run for office again. I fake ran for governor, and that was the most miserable experience of my life, and I will never ever ever do it again because I don't want to deal in that world. But if someone has the wherewithal to deal in that world and wants to be the person that goes out there and articulates the message of the Libertarian Party, you know what? They should just go and do it and surround themselves with the best possible people that are going to challenge them and keep them humble and guide them and be able to create great marketing materials for them. Like hire Dan Smots immediately because he is like the master, and just like do what you want to do and run your campaign. And who really cares whatever everyone says and what everyone thinks? Because if we're constantly this is what, like basically the number one rule in my book about like actively unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. You don't bend the knee to an outrage mob, right? The
Okay.
outrage mob is always going to be there. They're always going to be complaining. They're always going to say, we have receipts that don't actually exist in real life. And if you bend the knee to them, then you are allowing them to rule you. We're libertarians, Larry. We don't want anyone ruling us.
I agree. What bothers me most about this, the point that bothers me most is when any outrage mob attacks, it always ensures that the weak people get crushed.
Yeah.
Right? The elites always win because, for example, I'll give the example of comedians. If you're Dave Chappelle, it doesn't matter what someone says to you. You're uncancelable. You're Dave Chappelle. If you're Bill Burr, you're uncancelable. You don't care what people say. They can call you names, whatever they want, threaten to cancel you. No, you can't. You're uncancelable. You're powerful. You're some up and coming person. You're cancelable. You can't pay your rent. You can't pay your mortgage. You can't pay your car note. You're in trouble now, right? And that's the part. If you're Joe Rogan, you can't be canceled.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you say. Who cares, right? But you're some smaller person like me or you. There's a chance you could actually hurt us. But I think there's a special piece though, and that is your point. How do you become uncancelable? And by the way, my daughter told me this, and she's like a teenager. She said, the people who don't get canceled are those who just don't accept it. And I was like, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Just don't accept it. And you're not canceled. Why? Because I said so. That's it. That's all that it takes. So I'm a person who, as a general rule, when I get attacked, I tend to acknowledge it. I tend to. Even the horrible things. I remember one that specifically affected my campaign. In 2018, when the Republicans saw that I was making impact, they literally made up stories to say that I was anti-cop, even though my father was in law enforcement, that I was anti-gun, even though I was rated A by Gun Owners of America, that I was a Cuomo plant, that Cuomo planted me, and that was, even though that's, I wish it were true. Where was my money? Cuomo, you owe me some money. I wish that was true, right? They said all those things, and what did I do? I literally, I put it on my own social media. I used it as a way of growing. And I think they immediately stopped. They did that once and stopped, and did it again. Once I absorbed it and said, no, I'm in, they kind of stopped. I think that's kind of true. I don't know. What do you think on that one?
Yeah, I have a whole chapter in my book actually about like what to do when you get canceled, because if you're messing around with like the left, they will eventually cancel you, but the right will cancel you too. I've been canceled actually far more by the right than I have been by the left.
Yes.
And so neither side is innocent here. But no, I think you do have to make yourself uncancelable. And I absolutely agree with you that the first step to making yourself uncancelable is never to allow yourself to be canceled. No one can ever prevent you from speaking. Even if you get deep, like Nick Fuentes is deplatformed more than anyone in the universe. He still speaks. He speaks all the time. Like, yes. I mean, and he actually, like, him being deplatformed has actually allowed him to build an audience that he probably wouldn't have had they not just left him alone to say crazy stuff on the internet, right? But I do also think there is another really important piece of this, in that, when I teach in my book, I have deliberately set up like 7 different streams of revenue. So it's like I can make money in any number of different ways. I have my YouTube channel, I have my Substack, I have my locals community, I have private consulting that I do, I have et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's actually really important when you're talking about becoming uncancelable, because if they get me on one revenue stream, I have 6 others. Like it might hurt me in a temporary sense, but it's not going to hurt me in like a permanent sense. And I think that's the number one fear that I think most people have, is like, I'm going to lose my job. Well, guess what? You can always get another job, and you should probably have a side hustle started already if you haven't started one yet, because having a side hustle is going to set you up to truly be free. Because if you're working for someone else, you're not really free at the end of the day. And so I think that people just need to be smart about how they're setting up their lives. And there are so many platforms now that give you a lot of times for free the resources to start a business. You can even start, like, I started a merchandise store. I don't have any inventory for merchandise. I do everything print on demand. There are free resources that you can do right now to do this. So you have to take advantage of the resources that are out there for you to become uncancelable. And it's not a matter of just like snapping your fingers and it's going to happen overnight. You have to get up every single day and work for it, right? But once you achieve it, you would never go back to being a slave to someone else.
Well, it's funny you say that, right? I was talking about my daughter recently, and I said, do you want to work for somebody?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to have a boss? She said, no, I don't. I said, okay, that's great. I said, some people actually want to work for somebody. They want to work for a boss. They don't want to make decisions. They're okay with it. Some people want that, and they're going to find their joy or their someplace else, right? The work is just to pay their bills. They're going to find their purpose and their work someplace else. Okay, I get that. I said, so if you don't want to have a boss, no worries. Do you want to do the traditional marry some rich guy? She said, no. I said, okay, great. That's good. I'm not judging you if you want to do that. 100%. You do you, right? If you want to go marry some rich guy, totally fine. But she's like, no. I said, great. Then you have to find a way to make money on your own. That's it. That's it. You have 3 choices in life, right? 1, marry rich. That is an option people take. 2, work for somebody. Accept that you're going to have a boss and accept that as your life. No worries. Also true. Or go make some money. Those are your 3 choices. That's all you got. Yeah. So I really think that my daughter hopefully got that. I hope she did. I agree with you completely. Side hustle is important. Trying to find ways of building value is important. All things that are important. Unless you've decided I'm okay being reliant upon others in that regard.
Yeah.
As long as it's your choice, no issues whatsoever. No
And
issues.
there are a lot of reasons, like you said, that people would want to be reliant on others and just have a normal kind of day job. It's significantly less responsibility than working for
100%.
yourself. It's a steady paycheck, like insurance, like all those things. And so I'm not poo-pooing that, but I started my organizational psychology practice when I was commuting from New Hampshire into Boston, which is like a heck of a commute. But there are a lot of people who do it. There's a bus that goes down every morning and comes back every night. And so I was literally spending between 3 to sometimes 5 or 6 hours a day commuting between New Hampshire and Boston. But guess what I did when I was on that bus? I set up my side hustle and I worked on my
Right.
side hustle and I built it over time. And over time, that allowed me to go full time with that so that I didn't have to commute into Boston anymore. And like anyone can do this, but people just need to believe in themselves and know that all of the resources are there to do it.
I love it. So let me ask you before we wrap this up, anything
Yeah.
that we should be talking about that I missed?
Can we talk about the schools really quickly?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I think that the central issue that is facing not just like the Libertarian Party, but just like society in general right now is that the public school system is completely corrupt and it is unsavable. And I think people keep trying
Unsavable.
unsavable. Like I think that the problem is the teaching pool, because the teaching pool has been completely corrupted at like the College of Education level. And so whether or not you go into public school or private school or charter schools, a lot of times you're going to be pulling from that same teacher pool that's been completely corrupted by the woke ideology when they're in college. And by the way, Columbia, Teachers College at Columbia is the worst of the worst. The most woke teachers in the world graduate from Columbia. It's really, really bad. And I think that, what I'm really focused on right now is that I think that people need to understand what is going on in the public schools in that
Hold on 1 second. I want to
yeah,
touch this real fast.
go ahead.
This is the first time that I've actually heard someone say it the way you just said it. Right? When I was speaking about the public school systems, my issue, my worry was administrators.
Yes.
That administrators are the key problem, not the teachers. That has always been my issue. That I think because there are so many administrators who are following guidelines from both federal and state, that they're forcing teachers to teach the terrible agendas, teaching to the test, teaching in a way that just gets the checkbox from the government and not to get the kids to learn anything, which is why most of the time, particularly high school, most of high school was a colossal waste of time.
Oh,
literally a total, like literally you should not go to high school. What a waste of time. Like that's what most of high school is nowadays. And I always thought that was because of administrators. But you're saying it's the teaching pool's bad. But
Yeah.
my gut tells me, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that if we had opened up a system to where homeschooling and private schooling and public schooling were seen as equal in the eyes of the law, if that were true, that you would bring in more teachers who aren't from that. And that parents, when they would see it, would go, I don't want that kind of teacher. I want this type. And the market would help us in weeding out those teachers. Am I wrong on this?
So the problem is that Paulo Freire's style of teacher education has now been taught in colleges of education all over the country for about three generations of teachers. And so we're in a position where not only is almost the entire teaching pool completely corrupted without even knowing it. This is literally the only thing that they have ever been taught. So they don't know any differently, right? And so not only is the entire current population of teachers corrupted, the entire population of people training those teachers is also corrupted. And I don't want everyone to think that I think that like every teacher in the world is a true believer, because I don't. I think a lot of them just have never learned anything differently than this pedagogy of the oppressed, like Paulo Freire style of like, teacher education that is infused in the colleges of education. On top of that, you also have the state boards of education that are requiring in some states additional DEI training as a part of keeping your teacher licensure degree or your teacher licensure. And so that's adding into it as well. And who becomes the administrators in the schools, Larry? The teachers.
Yes.
The teachers become the administrators. And I'll tell you this too, and I've spent a lot of time researching this. So the teacher professional development programs now in almost every school district in the country, if you name any single school district, I'll go online and I'll tell you what their teachers are teaching, because they all have it on their websites. Those are almost entirely corrupted and almost always run by diversity people. Like teacher, like professional development training is now run through the district level diversity officers. And so when you're a teacher now, even if you like have positive intentions and you just wanted to teach kids, you are constantly being inundated with woke ideology from every which way. And so that's actually the key problem that is leading to this stuff being in the classroom. This is what's leading it to being in the curriculum, in the school policies, all that stuff. And so I think that people need to start to wrap their head around the idea that this is not a system that can be saved. I mean, you know, change management probably as well as I do.
Yes.
If you have something that has been a certain way for 3 generations, this is not a problem that is fixable in our lifetime. It's like gaining weight, right? If you gain 150 pounds, you ain't losing that weight overnight. It's going to take a long time for you to lose it. Well, we have a 2-ton problem in the teacher education program, and we're not losing that weight anytime
All right,
soon.
so hold on. I don't want to accept nihilism here. I just
All
don't want to
right.
accept it. I'm gonna
I do
gonna
have
just
a
be
solution.
stubborn.
I do.
Okay, so I'm gonna just simply just use no logic and emotion and go, no, you're wrong, because I don't want to believe that there's no way of solving it. What I thought was, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, 100%. I was thinking that if we were to, I tell people all the time, I can't fix New York overnight. You're correct. It has taken decades to destroy the state, right? I can't fix it overnight. But can I turn it around and have it face the right direction? I think as a governor, I could do that. I think I could turn it around to where it's facing the right direction. My goal, as I said, after my 4 years was simply to make it to where people aren't leaving New York anymore. That's it. That right now people are leaving New York in droves, 300,000 a year. They're just leaving the state. It's no tomorrow. They're bailing out as fast as they possibly can. So my goal was to just stop that, right? If I do that, I'm winning, right? And the rest we'll deal with. My thought process was changing how we fund education, because how the state and the federal governments deal with education is they use money, right?
Yeah.
Do as we say, or we don't pay you, so you must do it. So instead, you create a fund similar to what Norway and what Singapore does. The fund is a separate company, also similar to what Norway and Singapore does, because if it's part of the government just takes the money. So it must be a separate company with a separate CEO, a separate board, everything separate, with a mandate. And the mandate is to pay for education. That's the mandate. So when the private company makes the money and then must pay for each district, it pays $18,000 per student into the district directly. It doesn't matter where that kid lives, as long as they go to school in that district. That's it. They're registered in that district as a student in the district. The district gets the money. The parents get a credit if they don't want to go to the public school. The credit is $6,000 to either go to a private school or to homeschool, allowing private schools and public schools to open up all over the place, but you can still use the public school facilities. For example, this is why they don't get all the money. You can still use the swimming pool if it has a swimming pool. You can be on a football team if you want to be the chess team, right? Whatever. So you can still be part of your community school, even if you don't learn there, right? You can learn someplace else, but then afterwards go be in a football team or a chess club or whatever thing you like, right? Now, if we do that, what happens is there's literally no grants from the state, no grants from the federal government. Right now in New York State, there are school districts that have more administrators than teachers. Most of those administrators are to make sure that we're following state and federal guidelines. Well, once those guidelines go away, we don't require those administrators anymore. I'm not going to fire them, but the districts will.
Yeah.
So as they begin to fire these ones, there'll only be teachers left, right? And now I'm a parent and I go, I don't like that ideology. I'm going to take my kid into a private school, take my kid to homeschool. Now teachers will go where they need to go. There are some parents who love wokeness, who love CRT. I see them here. They think it's the greatest thing in the world. Those kids will still be taught that, which they would be anyway. I don't mind. You want that for your kid? Good on you. I think that your kid's not going to be as successful in life as the other kids, but we'll find that out when we find that out, right? That's how that works. Decisions you make, no worries on that. And I think we do that over the course of, I would bet, less than 10 years, you will see a serious shift, because you will watch the success rate of the children who are actually learning something. That's my gut.
I think that that's a really interesting idea, and I hadn't actually thought about that before, so I'm gonna noodle on that a little bit. But I think it does actually sound promising. I think for me, I think the biggest part is in defunding as much public education as we can. But if we can give people options, and I like this idea of like you have the resources to go and homeschool your kids or put them in another school, but then still use the resources and the facilities of the public school. I think that that's an interesting idea. There in New Hampshire, there are a bunch of state legislators that have like tossed around the idea of making the property tax optional because like 75% of my property tax or something goes to pay for public schools that I don't even use because I don't have kids. And so it's like you won't penalize people for not paying the property tax, but if you want to pay the property tax because you think you're getting a good value for that property tax, you are more than welcome to continue to pay it. I mean, there are other things that can be talked about. I think the biggest thing though is that homeschooling has got to be made easier for parents.
Yes.
It's got it, and it's not even just a practical reality of how do we homeschool. It's a perception because most parents just I think they like the idea of I want to have some sort of environment where I have more control over my child's education, especially after COVID and the lockdowns where they saw what their kids were learning. I think they're much more open to that idea. But I think so many parents think that it's unattainable to be able to homeschool your kids. And I think even just teaching them about like homeschool pods, homeschool communities where people get together, they pool their resources, hire a
Against the
private
law in
tutor.
New York State.
Oh God. Yeah.
Against the law in New York State. Yes. In New York State, once you create a pod, it's a school.
Wow.
They turn it into a school. Against the law in New York State. Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
But make it like getting rid of laws
Yes.
like that prevent people
Yep.
from doing that, I think is an important step. And I think that I do think that this is a perception issue. I don't think that school choice is going to fix the public schools, but what I do think that
Agreed.
something like school choice does is it gets parents used to critically examining what the schools are doing and saying, is this really the environment I want my child in, or do I want them over here? And I think how many people
Yes.
go through life and never question the public schools, right? Because it's
That
like,
was the silver lining of the terrible lockdowns.
oh yeah,
The
totally. Yeah.
lockdowns were a disaster. They have crushed our economy. They have crushed our children. They have ripped us to pieces. However, there is a silver lining, and that is parents actually saw what their teachers were doing.
Yeah.
And I actually got my wife to believe me. I've been telling my wife that school was useless for years. Like for years, it's useless. I don't care. Like I took my daughter out when she was younger to work a trade show with me. I was consulting with the client, and my wife's like, "But she's going to miss a test." I'm like, "I don't care."
Yeah.
But she'll never remember the test. It won't matter. It's irrelevant. It means nothing. She'll remember the experience she had working a booth with her father. That she'll remember and use. Some stupid test about like, I don't know, some math test. She's never going to use the math ever in her life. She's never going to use it. That's what computers are for. It's irrelevant. And she'll figure it out later, whatever. She'll if she needs to know how to do math, she'll go on YouTube and figure out how to do math. She'll be fine. Doesn't matter. And my wife never really got it until at the end when she actually saw what they were learning. She was like, holy crap, you're right. This is worthless. Yes, useless. No value. I pulled my daughter out a half a year early. I couldn't have done it without my wife actually agreeing with me. So it was awesome. She actually agreed with it. So I pulled her out a half a year early, and I had her start college a year early. So now she's going to get out of college in 2.5 to 3 years, which is awesome, cheaper, and she'll be out doing her own thing. I don't even want her to go to college, to tell you the truth. But she wants to go to college. My wife wants to go to college. I'm only going to fight the battles I can win. So I accepted it.
I mean, it sounds like she probably has a good head on her shoulders though, and she'll be able to survive college more than most. But I think you just hit on something that's really important in that most parents didn't really realize how useless the schools were until they saw what was being taught. And I try to remind people of this all the time. If you look at the nation's report card, we are experiencing people graduating from public high schools. Less than 36% of them know how to read at a proficient level. Less than 33% of them know how to write at a proficient level. Around 26% of them know how to do math at a proficient level because they're not learning anything in schools. This is publicly funded daycare. That's all it is. And I understand daycare is expensive. I really do. I understand why parents use the schools as daycare, but why are you setting your kids up to be functionally illiterate for the rest of their lives when when there are other options available. And I think that the more that we make those options available and the more we actually just like, this is what I try to do on my Substack. I just show what the schools are teaching. I don't actually do a lot of commentary. I just say, here is a webinar given by the Michigan Department of Education that is literally telling teachers how to groom your children to believe they're non-binary. Are you comfortable with this? If you are comfortable with this, send them to public schools in Michigan. If you are not comfortable with this,
there are some people who are.
Yes,
there are some people who are. And I'm good with that. You send your kid there.
Yeah.
I don't want to send my kid there. Yes, I completely agree. I'm with you completely. But there's a second piece I want to bring up here, if I could.
Sure.
And since we're walking down this road, this is your fault, by the way. So don't get mad at me.
Okay, I'll take responsibility.
There we go. Yes, okay. But no, the idea of religious schools.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not against religious schools. I know people are. I'm not. I don't care. If you don't want to send your kid to a religious school, don't. If you do, it's okay. If you're religious, you're probably going to try to instill that into your child anyway. No worries, right? I don't mind. And I got to tell you, it's weird with me. My family, we're all Greek Orthodox.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we sent our kids to Greek school for a while. My oldest one a little bit longer, my youngest one a little bit too back and forth. And my wife asked me, because I'm not raised Greek Orthodox. I'm actually raised Protestant. But when I married my wife, I agreed to put the family in that. So now that's the church we go to. It's fine. I don't mind. I'm good. I'm not very religious, to be forward with you. I'm not. Yeah. But I'm happy. I like the culture. I'm happy with it. And my kids are Greek. My wife is actually born in Athens. So it's a Greek culture. So I put my kids in there for culture more than anything else. And I don't mind. Like, let them go. But my wife then said, do you want to put them in Catholic school? And this is weird. But I'm going to tell you my emotion. I didn't like it. Now, again, I'm not Greek. I'm now part of Greek Orthodox Church. I am. But I was okay sending my kids to Greek school, but I wasn't to Catholic school. And it wasn't because I didn't want, that I don't like Catholics. That isn't the reason. It was because I felt like, well, that's not my kids. Like, they're not Catholic. They're Greek. So I didn't do that. I felt wrong. Right. No logic in it. Like, there wasn't a logic like, oh no, the Catholic school was worse than the Greek school or whatever. Like, I wasn't thinking that at all. It was just my emotion. And again, I say that because maybe you want to put your kid into a Catholic school because you're Catholic and you feel that it's right for them and you feel that it's the right culture for them. Or maybe you're religious. I don't care, whatever is important. But my point is, regardless of the situation, you're the parent. You're supposed to decide how your kids get educated.
Right.
And I think we've lost that. And we try to say, no, it's not that. And I'll bring up a point which many people don't realize. We made a mistake in New York State, a big mistake. And that is, we made education a right in our Constitution. People may say, Larry, yes, you're already getting it already.
Yep.
And Larry, why does that matter? Here's why it matters. Prior to that, every other right that a state constitution gave was for an adult. This was the first one for kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Once you make a right for a child, you have literally just said the state owns your children.
Yep.
And that is how New York State controls your children.
Oh, Larry,
the Constitution gave them the right to control your children.
You have backed into one of my favorite socialist topics to talk about. Which is, this one's
my fault.
We're about to enter the land of crazy dystopia that people are not going to believe it's real, but I promise it's real. Have you heard of the Abolish the Family movement?
Yes, I have.
Yes. So a core tenet like that's talked about in the Communist Manifesto, I'll do a too long didn't read for people in the chat, is that one of the things that they want, abolishing all private property is what essentially communists and socialists want to do, right?
Sure.
But what a lot of people don't realize is they're not just talking about your house or your car or your business. They're also talking about your children. It is literally in the Communist Manifesto that they want to abolish the biological family because they consider your children to be your private property and they want to liberate your children from being your private property. And then do you know what is in the very next paragraph in the Communist Manifesto?
No, tell me.
They're going to use the public schools to do it. Literally in the next paragraph. And so when we get into these discussions about like parental rights are one of the pillars that we need to fight to uphold over almost everything. And everyone just needs to get on board with this, because there is an active movement to try to dismantle parental rights in this country, and people don't understand where this is coming from. It is coming from queer Marxism. This is the origin of all. I have reverse engineered all of this. This is the origin of these
Wow.
ideas. And so
Okay.
what they're doing, and they're actually like, so not too long ago, there were articles in every major newspaper in the country attacking parental rights. There was a symposium at the University of Connecticut Law School that was a day-long symposium all about, are parental rights really in the best interest of the children, where the nation's top lawyers came to talk about how to dismantle parental rights. And they're trying to use the public schools to do it because they want the state to own your children. And this is
Yes.
all an attack on the biological family, because that is the core unit that is standing between them and their little collectivist takeover that they are so like hungry for. And so I guess what I want to say is like, these ideas of like the state has control over the education of your children. No. Like that is one of that's got to be one of the hard lines in the sand. If you want to send your kids to public school, send your kids to public school. Fine, whatever. I don't care if people send their kids to religious schools or Catholic schools or Christian schools or whatever, because we have that freedom in this country to be able to worship however we want. That's one of the rights we need to protect. But I mean, what people need to understand is that most of the attacks that are coming right now are coming from the very far left to advance this specific agenda. And because people think it's so crazy, they just don't associate the two.
All the time. And I see it all the time when people say things like, one of the things I stand up for is family law and family court, complete and total overhaul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the family law, family court is destroying the family too, going out of its way to crush the family. And when I tell people this, they go, no, that's not true. And I get it, because when I first heard the stories when I was running in 2017, 2018, I didn't believe them either.
Right.
I didn't want to believe that the New York State court system was destroying fathers and was breaking up families. I did not want to believe it at all. And I was wrong. 100%. The court system is going out of its way to destroy fathers and to pull them out of the family. And literally, it's being paid for it. People don't, I don't know if it's happening in New Hampshire, but in New York State, whenever you pay your money to your ex-spouse, it goes through New York State, and New York State takes a cut, like a credit card company.
Wow.
Yes, so they make money off your misery. Not just that, if they take your child, CPS takes your child, Child Protective Service take your child, the federal government gives the state government money. So it's a racket. So they make money off of our misery.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't want to believe that. So I didn't. Like, I was like, no. And then I'm like, wow, oh my God, it is true. Not just that, in our court system, any other place in court, if you lie to a judge, that's a crime, right? You cannot lie to a judge. You can take the fifth and not speak. That you can do. But you may not lie to a judge. If you lie to a judge, that's called perjury. Not in family court. In family court, yes, you can lie to a judge. It's not perjury. Yes.
Wow.
And I say, one of my reforms is, if you lie to a judge in court, no matter what, it's perjury. You must be treated as such and charged as such. Why? Why does this piece matter? Because family court lawyers encourage their clients to lie, because there is no punishment. But if that is treated as perjury, that's a felony. That attorney will lose a license for encouraging a felony. So they'll stop overnight. Let one attorney lose their license, the rest will stop. You will watch that change overnight.
Oh yeah.
And that's how bad it is. But they do it because why not? It's the system. It's how it works. It's what it is. It's how it works. So I believe you. The system is destroying families. And the thing I try to bring up with people is, what are all our prisons filled with? To the rim. Fatherless men.
Oh yeah.
Filled with fatherless men. And yet a judge will go, and the judge will actually do this. Judges make deadbeat fathers. I'm going to say that again for anyone listening. Judges create deadbeat dads. And here is how. If a dad falls behind at all, forgets, makes a mistake, does something wrong, what the judge will do is take their license as punishment. I'm not joking. So now we'll have a driver's license. How am I supposed to get to work and make money?
Right.
I can't. Not just that. They'll take their professional license. Well, I'm a plumber. How do I make money if I don't have a license? I can't make money. And the judge says, I don't care. You must make money. Not just that. In New York State and in most states, you cannot lower the amount of money you have to pay. So let's say at one point, I'm the father, I used to make $100,000 a year. So they're going to charge you based on $100,000 a year. Great. Now I lose my job, or it goes away, or COVID hits, the lockdowns hit, and I don't have as much money anymore, or I'm a sales rep and my vehicle is destroyed. The judge says, I'm not joking, I don't care, get a second job. So now the judge, the father must get a second, the mother doesn't have to go to work at all. The father must get a second job, find a job somehow. If he can't, literally he'll put him in jail. And when he goes to jail, he'll lose his jobs.
Right.
And the judge will not allow him to not pay for the time he's in jail. You still owe for that. So what do fathers do? They leave a state because they can't survive. They literally can't survive. So every single person who I've met at my events who's part of this issue, every one of them knows someone who's been a father who's put a gun in his mouth and pulled a trigger. Every one of them knows a father who has left the state. Everyone knows a father who's been put in jail. Every single one of them knows someone in that situation. There are literally millions of New Yorkers being destroyed and their families being crushed. And here's the worst part. The kids watch.
Oh, yeah.
The kids watch mom lie about dad, dad lie about mom. They watch their dad. This also happens, by the way, people don't get this. They also about how the men always go to jail, for breaking the restrictions. Here's what actually happens in family court, not criminal court. You'd be better off being a criminal. If you're a criminal and someone wants to put what's it called when they can't come see you? They can't come see you at a certain period of time. What's it called? I've lost my train of thought. It is the paper that the court gives out that says you can't come close to somebody. What's that called?
Restraining order.
Thank you. Restraining order. So if it's a criminal court, a restraining order has to have some kind of evidence, and you have to be told that there's a restraining order. They let you know. They say, Carlin, you have a restraining order against Larry. You may not be within 500 feet of Larry. Here's your restraining order. That's how that works. And the reason is because X, Y, and Z, here is the evidence that we have that we believe is appropriate. In family court, no. The woman just says, I'm afraid. Judge issues it without the husband being there or even knowing. That happens all the time. Once that happens, now they were married. They go to the same Walmart, the same Target. Then the same Target, she calls the cops. The cops sees the restraining order. The cops don't know that this guy has no idea what's going on. The cops assume it's like a criminal one. So they assume he's a bad guy or criminal, a convicted felon or something. They assume that. So they come at him hard because they think that he's a bad guy. Right. Cops don't know any better. This guy doesn't even know he has a restraining order.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, two cops attack him. He's like, what's going on? He fights back. He's in trouble, black eye, all the time. Not just that, the woman's there with her kids. So now the kids get to watch the cops pick their father up and do a perp walk. You're a young man. How do you feel about your father and yourself? You're a young woman. How do you feel about your father and yourself?
Yeah.
Not just that. What you thought was love, what you thought was your image of idea of love was your mother and father. You watched turn into something evil and nasty and vindictive and horrible. And you wonder why they can't have good relationships. And you wonder why they don't want to be married. You have shown them that it's stupid to do so.
Right. You've
shown them that it doesn't work, that it's a disaster, that it's a joke. You've shown them that. Why would they do it? And you wonder why so many men have checked out, so many women don't want marriage.
Yeah.
Family court, family law. Sorry, I went long on this, but that one was your fault.
I mean, no. I mean, I think I've never heard that particular perspective before, but I think it's indicative of there are so many problems in the justice system, so many problems. And I think we don't have time to do a deep dive into this today, but like one of my ongoing annoyances with the conservative right is they hold up the police and the justice system as though it's like this infallible, like back the blue, like all this stuff. And it's like, no, it's not. Like it actively destroys lives. Like my college boyfriend that got smeared on the internet, he got railroaded by the government into pleading guilty to a crime he didn't commit and spent a lot of time in prison. And now they use it against him all the time, even though because of how like bad the criminal justice system is. Yes. And I think that that, these are stories that I feel like there's a heartlessness when the conservative right talks about the justice
Yes.
system, where they
Yes.
don't see the human beings involved, and they don't see the impact that it has, not only on the adults, but I mean, as you said, also the children involved and the
Yes.
ramifications of that. So I mean, I think it's great that that's something you got your eye on, because it's something that I don't hear enough people talking about.
Absolutely, 100%. And I push it because I do think families matter. I do. And a lot of people think I'm crazy when I say it, but I think they
Yeah.
matter. It's where people grow up. It's how many people begin to think about their associations in their life. I think it does matter. And I think we should be careful. The government can't fix families, but it shouldn't destroy them. Right? It shouldn't
Right.
destroy the families, right? And families have a hard enough time staying together. I don't require families to do this. In fact, it's funny you were saying that. I was talking about a little bit off topic. We talking about
Yeah.
your high school boyfriend who was railroaded.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me so much is that the second somebody is accused, so many people assume they're guilty,
Oh yeah.
and many of them are. Don't get me wrong, but here's the reality: the vast majority of people who are guilty and who get arrested are convicted. It's not even close. If you are arrested and you're guilty, the odds of you being convicted are something like 99% or more, right? People aren't getting away with murder all day long. That's TV
Right.
show bullshit. That's simply not true. The reverse is true. A whole lot of innocent people are going to jail.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And people don't want to hear that. Like, oh my God, no. Oh my God. No. There's too many innocent people going to jail. I know. Some of the consulting I do with my emotional intelligence consulting is with the criminal defense attorneys. I'll help select juries. I'll help do a closing statement, opening statement, things like that. I help construct those things. Larger organizations don't need me because they have specialized lawyers who are always on trial. But smaller law firms, they don't go to trial often. They maybe go to trial once or twice a year.
Right.
So they need someone like me to come in and to kind of help craft these things. So I have literally watched innocent people go to jail. Literally.
Yeah.
Because the juries, people don't know this. When you go to a court, it's not one-on-one. It's not you against the state. It's not. It's 4 against 1. Every juror assumes you're guilty. Guaranteed they all do. The idea of innocent until proven guilty is a joke. Every jury assumes because you're there, you're guilty. The prosecutor assumes you're guilty. The judge assumes you're guilty. And if you're popular, the press assumes you're guilty. So those 4 people all assume you're guilty. It's 4 against 1. And people don't realize that. It's why so many people plea. I understand why they plea. I get it. I hate it. I think it's terrible, but I get it.
Yeah.
I do.
And I totally get it too. I mean, when my friend wrongfully went to prison, I mean, it was the same thing. He wanted to fight. He was geared up to fight. They had spent months prepping to fight, and then his lawyer sat him down and they did a focus group about who the jury was, and it turned out like there was an 80% chance that he was going to get convicted, and if he got convicted, he would have gone to jail for the rest of his life probably. And so his lawyer sat him down, was like, "You need to plead this out because you don't want to go to prison. Like in your game of Russian roulette, all of the chambers are loaded but one. Do you still want to play?" That was literally what his lawyer said to him. And that was when he wrote me a letter after he did it. And he said, like, I signed my soul onto that piece of paper that day. And it's just like, and people don't understand how detrimental this is. I mean, it is your faith in the system will never be questioned more than if you know someone who was wrongfully put in prison for something that they didn't do, right?
100%. I've seen more. So sadly, I've seen more than one person go to jail who was actually innocent. And the point is, people say, Larry, how do you know if the person was innocent? I'm on the defense team.
Yeah.
They tell me everything. I know the people who are guilty and those who aren't. Like, I know exactly what happened because I'm part of the defense team, and they can tell me anything. And I can't testify, right? Because I'm on the defense team. I'm part of his lawyer team. So I know everything. So with that in mind, I've seen innocent people go to jail, and it is heartbreaking. In fact, this is a true story. When it first happened to me, I couldn't work for over a week. I was depressed. I felt like my world was shattered because I believed in my heart at this. This is many years ago, obviously, but I believed in my heart that no. It's obvious he's innocent. It's obvious he won't go to jail. That's what I believed. Holy shit, was I wrong?
Oh yeah.
And then I always try to interview the jury afterwards if I can. For those who don't know, you don't have to interview a jury. Jury does not have to talk to you. It's not required. They can just walk away. but I always try to interview the jury when I'm done to see if I can get some insight into what happened, what I got. And sometimes the juries are just so nonchalant. And they're just like, yeah, we knew he was guilty. I'm like, God damn.
They don't see
Like,
them as human. It's
no,
just a
you're right.
pawn on a chessboard. It's a pawn. That's all it is.
Yes, it is. My first time doing it made me rethink my opening statements. Right? Like,
I bet it
every
did.
opening statement I ever do has changed from that day of me. Like, they don't, wow. Like being professional and giving facts to a jury, irrelevant. Mean nothing. Mean
It's
nothing.
true. It's true.
And I'm sad, but I'm sorry, you got me way off topic.
No, I think I'm
Yes.
so glad we had this because it's like, but I think that the disillusionment that you feel when you go through something like this is very similar to me, the disillusionment that I felt with politics once I really kind of like got into it and saw the sausage up close. And I was like no one sees anyone else as human. Everyone is out for themselves. No one really cares about the problems. And that's why I kind of just sat back and said, you know what? I'm going to find a small community of people on the internet that actually care about this stuff, that want to learn about it, that maybe it's crazy that we spend, dozens of hours a week watching socialism content, but you know what? That's what we like to do. And at least we're going to be prepared for what's coming. We might be blackpilled, but at least we're going to be prepared,
There we go. I like that. That's amazing. So guys, if you like what we're talking about, do me a favor, click the like button. I know I say it all the time, but it does matter. Please do it. It is important. If you're watching on Twitter, please retweet it. I know I keep bugging you. I bug you because it matters, not because I'm bored, because it matters. If you want to support the show, you absolutely can. Patreon.com/Sharpway, $10 a month makes me spend more time doing this and less time consulting with defense attorneys and becoming depressed. So that would help me out. You would help my depression. You can help me out with $10 a month. And of course, please follow the good doctor if you would. Either her Substack at Karlyn.substack.com, and that's Karlyn if you're listening to this, and also Dr. Karlyn B on Twitter, either one. I think this is a great show. I appreciate you coming by and having the conversation.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. So to everyone watching, I want to say thank you so much for paying attention. I will let you go. I'm going to chat with my audience for a few minutes afterwards, if you don't mind.
Cool.
I will let you run. Karlyn, great seeing you. I will see you very soon.
Thanks, Larry. Have a good one. Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye. So I know that usually when I'm done with a guest, I usually just end the show. That's what I usually do. Today, I'm going to talk for a little bit afterwards because there was a lot of vitriol in the chat. And why didn't I take the vitriol and hammer Karlyn for whatever you wanted me to hammer her for? I asked some questions for her to answer, but why didn't I do that? Because there's literally no value in your virtue signaling. And that may make you angry. I know it may make you angry, but you can virtue signal any way you want. You did on the chat. You said the things you wanted. I didn't block any of you. You said things that you wanted to say to virtue signal, and you can. Would it have helped the interview? No. Would it have made anything she said less valuable or more valuable? No. Anything you think she may have done or may not have done, whatever you might think of, you can still think that, and you can still say it online all you want. But this show is not about me attacking people, calling them out on things. That's not what I do here. You can go any place else and get that if you want to. No worries. Here, I'm trying to get people who have different ideas, who think differently, for us to talk to and talk about. The conversation is what matters to me. If you came here to virtue signal, you can do so in the chat. I'm not going to stop you. I have moderators that did not cut you off or stop you. You can do it all you want. But that's not what's going to happen here. So letting you know that. I'm not blocking you. You can keep talking all the things you want. No worries. It's not who I am. But I'm not going to take a guest on and just start and just ambush them. It's not what I'm going to do. So you can feel free to go on her stuff. Ask those questions if you want to. I'm sure she'll come in the chat and she'll watch. Maybe she will start checking things out and watching. And maybe she'll respond to you. I hope that she'll respond to you. I think it's appropriate. So for those of you upset, I apologize for you being upset. I don't want you to be upset. Hope you understand what I was doing. I will keep doing that again and again and again. I will keep doing that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for today. I will be back on maybe tonight, but maybe not. Also, I'll be on Monday evening at 9 p.m. I will see you all very soon.